Good afternoon and welcome back, everybody. I'll now call open the Executive Finance and Corporate Standing Committee meeting for 13 July 2022. Welcome to councillors and staff and to anyone watching via live stream. We'll go straight through to declarations of conflict of interest. Do we have any? No? Okay. I'd like to go to Councillor Potter in relation to the recent passing of Mr. Trevor Perrott. Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to call everyone's attention to the passing of the late member for Nanango, Mr. Trevor Perrott, and I'd like for Council to actually send a letter of condolence to his family. He was a member for Nanango for many years, starting out as an independent, then moving to the National Party, and I think it's only right that we send a letter to his family and we send our best wishes to the family at this time. And also his funeral is at 11 o'clock at Virgo's on Friday at Tabinga Cemetery.
Thank you, Councillor Potter. Of course, our thoughts and prayers are very much with his family, as Councillor Potter indicated. 5.1 committee is meetings of the previous minute, the 15th of June, minutes at 5, recommended that they be received. Do we have a mover? Thank you. Councillor Duff, seconder. Councillor Erkins, speakers. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Next item on the any business arising from those minutes? No, we'll move on to Section 8 is the Corporate Services, People and Culture, Communications, Media, Finance and ICT, and I'd now like to deliver my portfolio report, which is at page 17. Firstly, corporate governance and strategy, and with the adoption of Council's 22-23 annual operational plan, corporate governance and strategy has been working with the branches to release the plan to the wider organisation for implementation commencing 1 July 2022. Further, CG&S has reviewed and updated Council's sub-delegations, policies, procedures, forms and fact sheets, aligning terminology and responsibilities to the new organisational structure. On to people and culture, and with restructuring, following the adoption of the organisational structure in March 2022, we are pleased to report that Council has been successful in beginning the process of aligning services to the corporate plan. Recent recruitment has proved successful, with Leanne Peterson accepting the role of Manager Facilities and Parks, Anthony Bills accepting the role of Manager ICT and Fleet, and Jennifer Poynton promoted to the role of Manager Community and Lifestyle. Recruitment for the role of Manager Environment and Planning has proven unsuccessful, and Council has engaged the services of MacArthur to assist in a specialised recruitment campaign. And thank you to those staff and congratulations for taking on those roles. And we certainly are blessed to have Manager Mike Lyle here fulfilling the role in planning and environment while we go through the process of recruitment. Following on, advertising has commenced to recruit the new coordinator roles of Coordinator Environment, Health and Natural Resources, encompassing NRM, Environmental Health, Compliance, Departments and Coordinator Development Services to encompass Building, Planning and Plumbing departments. It is anticipated that as we progress through the restructure of essentially the Livability, formerly Community, department, with the intent that all changes will occur to staff affected and system by the 1st of August 2022. Further details, including corporate structure and the functions map, will be presented to the August Standing Committee, Executive and Finance. Moving on to Communications and Media, and you can see the data there. In June 2022, we issued 35 media releases, attended to 6 media inquiries, 80 Facebook posts, 62 Instagram posts, 1 e-news article, 3 printed advertisements and 51 graphic design articles. A list of all those releases and inquiries and statistics for June are available as an attachment to this report. And thank you to Mr. CEO, your media team, for the wonderful job they've been doing over the course of the month. Finance and sustainability. At the end of June 2022, Council held $62.34 million in cash and cash equivalents, with $45.694 million sitting with Queensland Treasury Corporation. The Finance Department have completed the 22-23 budget, which was presented for adoption by Council on 8 July 2022, and the end of financial year processes ran smoothly. Water meter readings were completed in June. Second readings for meters that recorded higher than usual amounts are scheduled to start on 22 July. And in July, accounts payable are transitioning to paperless processes where possible. I would like to, of course, again, acknowledge and thank the finance team for not just the work that they did in compiling the budget over several weeks and bringing it to finalisation, but also in terms of the many hours that go on in the back offices of the Finance Department with the end of year financial processing. There's a lot of work to wrap up the financial statements at the end of the financial year, and so my sincere thanks go to them on behalf of our council. With that, I'd like to move that my report be received. Thank you. Okay, do we have a seconder? Councillor Potter, thank you. Any speakers? Councillor Shoemaker.
Just two things, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for your report. First thing, cash reconciliation. It is, it's incredible. Council looks so healthy with so much cash in the bank, but we know that much of that's restricted and for future projects. So my question was just when, if there's a cash reconciliation project or something underway where we can actually see, like I'd really like to understand from all the cash we have in bank, those attached to long-term financial those attached to long-term capital projects that must be delivered, critical infrastructure projects. What component is that? What component is FAGS funding or the waste levy funding that has been paid in advance? And what component, after every area has their restricted cash and after we've funded depreciation and this year's deficit, how much actual, as they term, free cash is left once you take off those 3 months worth of operating costs that you have to have in the bank? So that's probably a question to GM Susan. I'm just really keen to get my head around that sooner rather than later.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm more than happy to provide that to all the council. Councillor, I actually, Kerry sat down and we did a full cash reconciliation for that reason the other day, so we could see the terminology free cash. It depends how you define that, but what I wanted to see was how much free cash we would have after we did face those commitments. We identified, like you're saying, restricted prepayments there of our waste levy, things like that. So I'm more than happy to provide that for council's information. Just bearing in mind that it does sort of vary from month to month, but normally the 3 monthly operational funding we have to restrict or have readily available there. It normally sits around now, has increased to around $17 million. So yeah, and we do have the restricted, I think there's, just without quoting exact figures, there's about 24 million there that we've restricted for projects that, we've identified and that, but like I said, more than happy to provide that for all of the council.
Yeah, maybe if a report could come back to the standing committee or something. I think it's really important that we all understand how much actual cash, as in real money, is there, particularly when funding opportunities and things present themselves. I am thinking about the funding, the projects that we have put forward for funding, and the fact that we'll have to find, if we are successful, some of those grants that we've gone for actually require a cash backing as well. So yeah, just really want to understand that. And my second question, I just fully understand there was an enormous amount of work that went into those budget workshops and discussions. And I guess I'm thinking that Christmas, while we've only just laid down the budget, I know every quarterly review will be as important as the next. Christmas really isn't that far away. And I'm just thinking about how we may be able to get on the front foot in locking some of those dates away for the next budget process, so that they're in the calendar well in advance and we know what's happening sooner rather than later. They're my two things. Thank you, Mr Mayor, for the report.
Thank you, councillor. Any further speakers or general manager? No? Okay, we're happy to go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Councillors, the next item will need to be 80.2, councillor portfolios. Mr CEO, we need to lift that off the table, I believe, won't we? Yeah. So the procedural motion offers a recommendation that the matter be lifted from the table. Do we have a mover? Councillor Duff, seconded Councillor Jones. Mr CEO, would you mind leading us through this one? Oh, yes, sorry, to the vote. To the vote? Those in favour? Yes, carried unanimously. Thank you. Sorry, Mr CEO. We'll cross to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks, Mayor, and through the chair. There's probably not a lot I can add to. It's been presented a couple of times, and just through illness for all of us and absence as it was left to today. I did note, Mayor, if I may, reference that the email went out last night on your behalf and spoke about a workshop. So whether council wanted to deal with this today or send it to a workshop, totally really in council's hands as to direction. For the budget media, we had discussed informally, Councillor Erkins kindly accepted to be the acting portfolio holder for water wastewater, which we've utilised in the budget media, but other than that we haven't made any changes to the portfolio structure pending this discussion and outcome of debate.
Yeah, thank you, Mr CEO. I guess with Mr CEO already in the hands of councillors as to how you'd like to proceed. Councillor Shoemaker.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. I would like to move a motion that the committee recommend to council that the assignment of councillor portfolio representation remain as previously defined with the portfolios including point 1, social and corporate performance, people and culture. Sorry, Bree, I should have typed this for you. Communications and media. Finance and ICT with Mayor and ICT with Mayor Otto. Rural resilience, parks and gardens. Property and facility management and Indigenous affairs. Councillor Duff. Roads and drainage. Councillor Jones. Community arts, heritage, sport and rec. Councillor Potter. And local disaster management. So sport and rec, local disaster management. Water and wastewater and waste. Councillor Erkins. Rural services, natural resource management, planning and compliance. Councillor Henson. And economic development. Councillor Shoemaker. And Bree, I'd like to add in the top line, the only change I'm proposing with the portfolio for the Mayor, ICT and tourism with Mayor Otto. Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to move that my motion be accepted.
Thank you, councillor. Just with, did you want economic development to be regional development? Should that be regional, Mr. C? Regional development, yep. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Duff Okay. Councillor Shoemaker, thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I thought long and hard about the suggestions that have been put forward, and certainly the discussions we've had in this chamber about portfolios, and trying to align them with the organisational structure, and I think the responsibilities that were previously given to us at the beginning of the term are still very relevant. I feel that particularly with my portfolio, to be honest, I'm only just getting started. The reality is that I've been knocking on the doors of opportunity since the commencement of this council, and I'm very pleased to report that in this financial year, GDP for 2021 grew by 8.6% and representing $2.03 billion, being a measure of our net wealth of our local economy, and our population's grown by 0.9%. And I mention that because I think I've been saying since I was elected that the South Burnett will be the next growth story, and I absolutely believe that. And when I started to reflect on some of the feedback you'd provided about trying to break up my portfolio, to be honest, I just don't want to do that. And I've thought about all of the things that I've worked hard to achieve, and some of the highlights of my portfolio, particularly being that there have been very limited resources to support me with that. Things like the Small Business Friendly Council and working with the Commissioner and becoming a Small Business Friendly Council. Things like embedding the regional development strategy, communicating that broadly and adopting it. Things like developing the advisory committee, the terms of reference, the panel and the first meeting, and I've got the second meeting well underway with a focus on livability. I've renewed partnerships with TSBE, SQCT, the Department of State Development, RDA, and entities like AgForce. I've built networks and contacts across local government boundaries and interstate. I've built very valuable relationships that I leverage for the benefit of this council and its growth. I've leveraged the LGAQ and working groups such as that of the Hydrogen Working Group. I've also been working with the Bundaberg and Burnett Regional Water Assessment Advisory Group participation in the investment logic mapping, the demand assessment. I've been progressing phase 2 of the National Water Infrastructure Development Fund demand assessments and investment logic mapping exercises. I've been advocating to the Department of Energy and Public Works. I've been meeting with people like the Minister of Angus Taylor, previous government, Minister Lance McCallum, Minister de Brenny's office about the national electricity rules and communicating closure dates sooner so that communities like ours can prepare for the transformation that is happening in the energy sector. I've been building housing partnerships with regional housing. I've attended forums in Bundaberg. I've invited colleagues, brought people to the table, and have been working with the team to coordinate a forum here, which was just one step closer to an action plan. I've coordinated a business roundtable in Nanango in partnership with CCIQ. I've partnered with other councils like Banana Shire to table motions that advocate for transitional planning for our region, noting 25% of our economy is related to the coal-fired energy. I've set a 50% local buy target, and we're on our way to achieving this, and I will report back. I've worked with Adventure Tourism, worked with South Burnett Mountain Bike Club to support funding to progress Gordon Brook Adventure Park. Food tourism, worked with Farm to Fork, actually written funding applications with them. Worked with Dusty Hill to support their recent developments and continuing conversations about the springboard tourism opportunities in Moffatdale. I've written grant applications and been a part of discussions that have seen us apply for dark fibre, have seen us apply for Resources Council funding, have seen us apply for and be successful for bushfire grant funding, which has seen $1.6 million that now has allowed us to have boots on the ground for this portfolio. And there's so many things that I've got listed here. Agriculture, progressing a growers group, working with the Regional Development Officer to develop the action plan with the advisory committee, looking at circular economy opportunities with Department of State Development, looking at potential renewable energy and innovative pilot projects that we are having investors knock on our doors, and I'm looking at things like a prospectus for local content and taking the learnings from Western Downs. There are so many things here, talking about international tourism collaboration with Southern Queensland Country Tourism, and certainly looking at the Brisbane Olympics and the Red Earth Leadership Forum as a forum where we are cultivating and planning our future. I feel so invested in this portfolio. I have literally spent hours of my own personal time, effort, energy, funds. I've driven all over the countryside to progress my portfolio, and I feel I've only just gotten it shaped up to have some resources to help me with this, and I'm not willing to let go of it just yet. By all means, I'd welcome the opportunity to work with you and any councillor in the team to progress my portfolio, but I think all of us are well placed to deliver on these requirements. I think we all enjoy our portfolios, and I don't want to see change at this point in time. By all means, we can certainly change the titles to represent our new organisational structure if we like, and more information around that will become available as that's released next month with the report on the structure. So at this point in time, I really feel vested in my portfolio. Mayor Otto, I can see your proposal had identified a number of key issues for our region that I would be able to work on in a new portfolio, but I feel I'd just be starting all over again with no resources and trying to tackle the big challenges. Very much, I'm keen to progress my portfolio and keep working forward, and I'm passionate about it, and I want to continue. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Shoemaker. Okay. Councillor Jones, why you look at me like that? Okay. Councillor, are you thinking about afternoon tea? Was I supposed to call afternoon tea? Okay. Councillor Erkins.
Thank you. Congratulations, Councillor Shoemaker. You really have been working extremely hard. I can see that. One of the things that I'd like to add, well, I'm quite happy to take the water, wastewater and waste portfolios. There are a number of portfolios in there that I think that I have probably some experience in, and I'd like to think that I could work with other councillors, especially when it's something that I would be interested in and it affects my division. So just to put that out, that, you know, tourism, I've been involved in the Tourism Association, the Chamber of Commerce, many of those things. So,
Thanks, Councillor Erkins. Councillor Potter, your thoughts?
Yeah, thank you. Actually, just with hearing Councillor Erkins say that, I actually think tourism would sit really well with Councillor Erkins, as I really think she could sink her teeth into that, like, quite well. The other thing is, with Councillor Erkins, I know we've got the Arts, Culture and Heritage Advisory Committee, and we have Councillor Duff on that, but I'm just wondering whether that's something we can discuss, whether Councillor Erkins comes onto that instead of Councillor Duff. I know that would be something that I'd need to discuss with you. Sorry, I haven't discussed it, but it's just sort of dawned on me that Councillor Erkins has that sort of, work in that space as well. So I really would like her on the Arts, Culture and Heritage Advisory Committee as well. So, but that would need another resolution, I'm sure, Mr. Mayor, would it?
Yeah, I'm sure we could move a motion after this one and deal with that today, yeah, as a recommendation to council, for sure. Okay, what's everyone else thinking? Councillor Jones?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I can't see any reason why we need to change anything too much. But again, hearing Councillor Erkins' comments, she's had a long history involvement with tourism, and I think that portfolio would sit very well with you as a councillor and a portfolio. And I will offer this to Councillor Erkins as well as the chamber to consider. I would be more than happy to step up and work and take over a certain amount of responsibility in the wastewater and whatever else the other, what is it? What do you call yourself? Water, wastewater and waste, and give you a hand and let you get your feet under the table properly, let yourself settle into tourism in particular, and I'd be more than happy to add that extra little bit of responsibility, because I work with exactly the same people that I work with in roads and drainage. I work with the same people in water, waste and that sort of stuff. So if I'm in one meeting, I can just transgress from that straight across. So happy to, but yeah, other than that, I can't see why we need to change up too much. Everything's working quite well. Councillor Shoemaker's made some good points. And like I say, to let Councillor Erkins, she's only been here a couple of months, I'm more than happy to extend into that other portfolio just to help out until she gets settled and gets her teeth into tourism, which I think sits very well with the councillor.
Councillor Jones, I think what we might do is we'll keep going around the room, get everyone's views, and then we can consolidate that into a common position at the end. So I won't make any observations to let everyone have a talk, and then I'll try and wrap all that up. So, Councillor Henson.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, through you. Yes, Councillor Shoemaker, completely agreed. 2 years or so in, you just start to get your teeth sunk into things, and like you've said, and in your upcoming portfolio report, we will hear much, much more, and I've read through that, and there's some incredible facts and figures in there. And me personally, I'm happy to stay as all portfolios were. As I've expressed my concern all day, rural services, yeah, I don't, someone would have to fight pretty brave to get that off me, I'm sorry.
Thanks, Councillor Henson. Councillor Duff.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I think that's all sits well. I just did, I know that Councillor Erkins was a bit interested in sport and rec, and I just wondered about, that's just a suggestion, that was all.
Thank you. Councillor Potter.
Yeah, a couple of things. I'll swap you waste for sport and rec.
Okay, I'm making notes. Thank you. Okay, now I'm going to sum up. I'm going to move amendment to the motion in a minute. So we won't change too much. Mr CEO's jumped on it, which is good. I'm going to move an amendment, an amended amendment to the motion, if I could, Bree. And my sincere apologies for doing this to you, Bree. But I want to try and summarise all this and bring in a couple of other factors that I think I'd like to see us turn our mind to in line with our corporate plan. So, Bree, if we could just take Councillor Shoemaker's motion there, and if we could copy that into an amendment, if we could, please, that I'd like to put forward. And I'm just going to work through this. Probably I'll jump all over the place here, Bree, but I'll go nice and slowly for you.
While you're getting your thoughts together, tourism would come, just in the original motion, tourism would come out of it, regional development. Is that correct? Yep. So that we'd lose tourism up there, Bree. And with the duplication of water and wastewater, if we're going to have assistants and deputies and things like that, this table would show the primary responsibility, so we wouldn't duplicate. So if you take water, wastewater and waste out of,
I'll probably pick that up, Mr. CEO.
Yeah, you're going to, because there's a couple.
So what I might do, I might
there's
put
a
something
couple
forward,
of
and then I might get you to just, I'll get you to tidy it up. Councillor Erkins, please, you've got to put that button on. Can I have a go? Is that all right? Can I have a go? So what I want to suggest is, sorry, Councillor Erkins, are you unhappy with something there? Just pop your light on, Jane.
Sorry, the water and wastewater have been taken out of my...
Yeah, you know, I'm across all that.
Okay.
Thanks. Can I just have a go? So what I'm suggesting is, and Bree, can you just roll back up to my proposal that I had there? Because I've got to try and just probably make some notes here. We can pull this together. So if you can go back up to my, just scroll up to page 4, Bree, if you don't mind. Thanks. Keep going up. Yep, just a bit further. Sorry, might be 4 or is it 3? Oh, you deleted my proposal. Okay. I'm just going to put this forward and then I'll talk to it. Can I just have a look at that? Okay, I just got to make some notes, Mr. CEO, sorry. Yeah. Okay. Compliance. Okay, thanks, Bree. I just had to make some notes there. If we can go back to that amendment, thanks, Bree. Okay, so amendment, yep. So to the amendment, so corporate governance and strategy, people communications and media. I'll come back to that one we'll go down to next to Councillor Duff. Can we put compliance in with Councillor Duff? And I'll explain shortly on that one. And this is, as I said, just a proposal to consider. If we keep going, can we take, can we add waste there to Councillor Potter? Waste and recycling. And can we just copy out Sport and Rec and put that with Councillor Erkins, please? With tourism. And can we take waste out of Councillor Erkins? And can we take water and wastewater and put that with Councillor Jones? Oh, you've got that, thank you. Okay, with, can we take planning and put it with Councillor Shoemaker? Regional Development and Planning? And can we put in Councillor Henson's agricultural industry development? Can we go up to environment? Mr. CEO, environment, does it need to be captured anywhere? I know we've got a planning and environments going together now, isn't it? Yeah, that's environmental health, isn't it? Those issues.
You got natural resources, environmental health, and compliance really all sort of sit
Stay
together
together.
now.
Yep. Okay. Want to see what councillors think on that one. Okay. Councillor Shoemaker's got water security. Can we just take tourism out of Councillor Shoemaker's? We've moved that to Councillor Erkins. Can we put housing in there for Councillor Shoemaker as well? Planning underneath housing and planning. Yep. Underneath planning would be fine. Yep. And can we get back up to mine and include look at that. No, that's probably fine. If we can go back down to Councillor Shoemaker's, I'd probably just like to, under regional development, to put in there energy, under water security, yeah, energy and circular economy. I know that's being specific, but just trying to make sure that that is reflected somewhere, which is, you know, really around the energy transformation that's happening. Yes, thank you, Bree. I think you've got everything except environment there, so I'll probably can we put it with waste recycling? Yeah, who's passionate about environmental health services? Anyone particular, councillors? Councillor Henson, let's put that in there. Environment, just environment would be fine. Thanks, Bree. I think that's picked up all the things that I wanted. So I might just talk to that motion before I move it, councillors. Probably wanting to just, I think the first change there, if we should probably start with Councillor Duff, was to try and, I know Councillor Duff, you've been very focused on, not to say that Councillor Henson hasn't been, but you're certainly very energetic around compliance with overgrown allotments and housing issues and so forth. Community arts, heritage, LDMG, waste and recycling, yes. Yes.
Sorry. Mr Mayor, do you want me to stand up?
Yes, please.
There was a comment made last night, but I'm just wondering if health and youth should be under community as a dot point like you have with regional development.
Yes,
Thank
please.
you.
Yeah, that was one I had missed. Yeah, health, just a dot point for health and another dot point for youth.
Just one more little addition, Mr Mayor, just before
Yes.
you start talking.
Yeah, sure.
Roads, drainage, water, wastewater, plant and fleet, under me.
Yes. Now, plant and fleet goes with ICT. Will that be okay, General Manager, if we put fleet down there? Yep. Okay. So community compliance, I guess we know Councillor Duff's passionate about that. The Councillor Potter, waste and recycling. I'm wanting, I guess I'm keen to see that we do continue our push forward on environmental issues, particularly with recycling and also energy sector transformation. I'm of the view that, as I articulated in my email last night, that with the new federal government now taking the reins, that we may see increasing opportunities in terms of energy transformation, in terms of circular economy, in terms of greater investment in waste and recycling and all of these things at the federal level. Maybe not so much waste and recycling, but certainly in terms of initiatives that are going to move towards, I suppose, a more environmentally, well, a greater focus on environmental sustainability. I think everyone knows what I'm trying to say without getting my words wrong. You've got to be careful with the words you use in this space because it's very political, but certainly wanting to see us progress that. Hence, I think it's important to include recycling in there. And I think similarly with energy and circular economy, I probably just was keen to see us actually just bullet point that so that we actually know that is part of what we're focusing on, and wanting to see Councillor, I suppose, a greater link between regional development and planning in terms of progressing planning forward to underpin the development of our communities. I want to recognise the importance of continuing to focus on housing. And I know that gives Councillor Shoemaker a fair swag of work to do, but I think they're really important areas with some great opportunities coming forward in that space. The ag industry development, I would like to see that acknowledged and represented in our portfolios, and so that Councillor Henshin can specifically work in that space that he's passionate about with Councillor Shoemaker. And of course, yeah, Councillor Jones, thanks for taking on water and waste. It seems to me water and wastewater to align that with roads and drainage in terms of how the organisation is structured, so that you can work with the infrastructure team around that. So I think giving a focus to some of those things that we've clearly identified. Probably the only other thing is I'd like to see the word community and livability, perhaps, if we could, for Councillor Potter, because obviously that's been I guess I'm just trying to add to this some of the things. It's going to be a work in progress leading into the next council that do reflect our corporate priorities in our corporate plan. I'm probably a bit disappointed that I've only got internal things, and please don't take that the wrong way, Carolyn, or finance guys, but I haven't got anything too exciting that involves me with the community. It's all, policy development, HR, comms and media, finance and accounting. I've been doing that for too many decades, and computers. I mean, you got given me anything terrible. I mean, I shouldn't say that, am I? But how do I say that? Hey, I just don't get anything that I can get my teeth into that involves out in the community. Does anyone understand what I'm trying to say? I feel a little bit sort of confined to the office in terms of the portfolios that I've got. I would have liked the opportunity to do something. I suppose that's going to bring some something that's more out engaged in the community, if I could, but not sure what that would be. But anyway, I'm happy to continue on as I've been going. So look, I'd move that and seek a seconder. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Shoemaker, thank you. I've probably spoken enough, so I might open it up to other speakers. Councillor Shoemaker, thank you.
Mr. Mayor, the only thing I would suggest adding to your portfolio is advocacy and actually recognising it as a role, because I think that's the overarching thing with your portfolio, where we really do need that work of a leader and you as mayor rallying all of these things that we're working on. Certainly I get your point in engaging in the community. And many of the things that I've been working on, I've realised there aren't things that I can't necessarily put up on Facebook and say to my community, I've been here talking to you about this because I've been outside the region or focused on those bigger picture challenges, which doesn't always serve me well because I'm not out and seen by the people as much as I would like to be. So I have got some strategies in place around that. But I'm thinking your key role is sort of that overarching leadership across all of these portfolios, and certainly that advocacy piece is very important. And I think it's something that we really do need to focus more attention on. I've been speaking to, I know you've worked hard in this area in sort of recently attending the ALGA conference and certainly LGAQ civic leaders and working with TISB. I know that some of our neighbouring mayors are in Brisbane every single week, meeting with different key parties and things, and I think we've got to get better at taking the stories and the needs of the region in a very coordinated way to the halls of parliament and to and I know you've done some of that, but I think that's a key focus. We really do need that from you in your role, being down there, knocking on the door, banging on the tables and making sure we're building those relationships and it's understood what we need here in our region. So just like to recognise that because that's an important function of your portfolio and your role, and I think you need the time to do that effectively.
Thank you, Councillor. I just wondered, would Council want if we included community relations in there in terms of relationship building between council and community? And I know I probably haven't been great in that space traditionally, but is that something that we could add to underneath advocacy? So it's about then linking with, as Councillor Shoemaker said, advocacy at that outside the region, but also advocacy inside the region. Would Council anyone be particularly concerned if we added advocacy and community relations or community relations? Yeah, yep, happy with that. If Councillor Shoemaker, if you're happy with that change as the seconder, I think Councillor Shoemaker was the seconder. Yeah, so other speakers, other thoughts? Councillor Erkins?
So I've been taken off what I was getting used to and now changed to something completely different. I was looking forward to the water and wastewater. But so long as I said, so long as if it's happening in my area, so long as I'm kept up to date with what's happening and so long as I can work with councillors who have those responsibilities, but also being new to it, I'll definitely need some direction for the tourism and the sport and recreation. Thank you.
I think you'll get that support from your colleagues, Councillor Erkins, I'm sure. Yeah, Councillor Potter particularly will support you there. Councillor Duff?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to add disaster recovery to mine, rural resilience and disaster recovery, because I am the chair of that disaster recovery, and I just think that way it's acknowledged up the top. Or top, I would put it rural resilience and disaster recovery. Yeah. Thank you.
Anything, Councillor Shoemaker?
Just an idea, Mr. Mayor. Certainly Parks and Gardens, for Councillor Duff, just keen to hear your thoughts. Parks and Gardens, property and facility management, like I've seen the reports come through today, you have an enormous number of facilities across the region, and I'm just wondering if that might be an area even that Councillor Erkins may be able to work shadow you in or support you in, or, you know, because that is such a giant area, and it's probably a good opportunity for Councillor Erkins. I'm very mindful we've got a couple of years on you, but it's probably a really great opportunity to sort of pick up some of that on-the-ground knowledge on the go, and yeah, you might really enjoy shadowing Councillor Duff in that Parks and Gardens and property and facility management area and provide some really valuable input into those portfolios. Is my thinking, like if we just put them as bullet points on Councillor Erkin's, so that it's noted that they're areas of responsibility that she too partners in with Councillor Duff. I think the work that you've done previously, Councillor
Check with
Erkins, would
Mr.
be really
CEO.
valuable in that area, and it'd be a great opportunity to get your feet on the ground in different areas across the region as well.
Would you be prepared to take on facilities as your primary responsibility? Property facility? Okay. Oh, yeah.
Just, Mayor, if I may, without duplicate, probably, certainly it's the same point before I was made, rather than this list will be a primary list without having the deputy, so I wouldn't pop those two in there, Bree, just for a start. Now, there will be some divergences as to how the departments are going to be, and I'm going to throw out a left field suggestion. So we've got the report to come back just on the function mapping and the different departments. We've got one called commercial services, where we've put dams, aerodromes and sale yards all together, which would be, if you're starting to look at breaking up their properties and facilities, that would sit, because the dams and tourism go together, and so that would pull out of Councillor Duff's and go into Councillor Erkin's. So if you drop under Sport and Rec commercial services, that'll align. When we bring this, because we use this now that we've got this, whatever form it gets adopted in today, as guidance to help to give a framework around when I bring the report back. There'll be the service, so there won't be a direct alignment between the functions mapping and these, but that's not a bad thing. But if council is willing to look at some different options, the 3 standing committees as opposed to 2. So we run first, just thinking about this and the merge, and this is just left field and as thinking on the run a little bit, but that would be a report. But certainly with the merging of some of the function mapping and some of the functions of portfolios, you could actually, given the livability and the exec finance committee, standing committees, ours is always a smaller agenda than communities. Communities is where I'm a bit like you, Mayor. I'm sad to say Peter's got all the good stuff, and Susan and I bring up the rear. Yeah, like really. Ours is a lot of mechanics, but we could probably look for after the first quarter and bring it back to August, and by the time it would flow through. But just as an option of actually merging, and we could run standing committees first and second Wednesdays of the month. Third Wednesday would be free, which would allow us, because the exec finance always has trouble because we do the Wednesday, not trouble, but just getting the stuff on, making sure it makes the agenda for Friday. We could have that third week free, and then the ordinary as the fourth week. It would free up, and rather than having to push through with one meeting like we did today, or lose. Anyway, if you're willing, just as a thought, we could bring that back to the August Exec and Finance Committee with this, and we'll bring the function. I've got a very rudimentary function map here, which still needs work to refine before it's presented to council, so it's not looking like a jumble of notes. We've got this to give guidance. We've got the function mapping for the departments, and then we could also, if there's no change, there's no change, but it would give you some options and some food for thought. But certainly, long answer to the question, commercial services, the only bit the commercial services, and this would be what would need the refinement, picks up the sale yards, and so the sale yards I think currently sits with Councillor Hench, and so that would be a discussion point.
Thank you, Mr. CEO. Further points, Councillor Potter?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just, when we're talking about commercial services, does that include the rail trail and things like that as well, or?
No. We're looking at things that make money, basically, or have the potential to make money.
Because the one thing I did notice with Sport and Rec is that literally everything in Sport and Rec actually sat under parks, and it and at times I felt like, it really wasn't worth having that portfolio when most of the things happened either in the parks or on the rail trails or on the dams, and then they sort of basically sat with Councillor Duff. So just putting that out there that you know, maybe the park side of things should maybe go to Councillor Erkins, I don't know, but yeah.
Any feedback on that, Councillor Duff and Erkins?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the parks really, I didn't associate it with sport and rec. I more thought it was about trying to get flowers and gardens and things and parks rather than actually the sporting part of a rail trail. That was all.
But see,
Councillor Potter.
sorry, but see, when you're talking, you've got the rail trail with all the sporting events on, you've got the dams with all the fishing events on, you've got the parks with all the, you know, the cricket nets and things like that on, so, yeah.
So, sorry, Mr. Mayor, parks and gardens, I always thought it wasn't the actual activity, it was actually all the parks and gardens. We do all of the actual mowing and all of that stuff. The activity is the sport and rec. That's where you do the fishing on the dam, whereas I was just looking after making sure that the facility got looked after as opposed to what activity was on it.
Councillor Jones. Anything further?
Yeah. I don't want us to underestimate the amount of time and commitment or time that Councillor Erkins is going to have to commit to tourism and sport and rec. On top of the commercial services with the dams and all that sort of stuff. And I only offered, by all means, Councillor Erkins, I will be handing over the reins to the roads and drainage to you as well while I'm in hospital getting 2 knees. So you will have plenty to keep you busy and you be careful what you wish for. Just something to think about because tourism and sport and rec will take up a lot of time and they are big portfolios. Maybe, and I think we're starting to dabble into it and making it all messy and overcomplicating it. We're putting dot points everywhere. Yeah, I don't think we need to overcomplicate. I think I'll just use Councillor Shoemaker's regional development, all those dot points. She's already doing that and addressing all that sort of stuff. I know they're there, but let's just keep it simple so that we go. My last comment would be commercial services maybe sitting with Councillor Hanchin. And just the only reason I say that is the fact that if you ask Councillor Shoemaker how much time tourism took up, and if you ask Councillor Potter how much time sport and rec took up, you will be busy. And with the commercial, even though it does sort of tie in with that, and I'm happy for the CEO to guide me and tell me that I'm completely wrong, but yeah, just an option there. And I'm not being disrespectful. You're just getting your feet under the table, and there is a lot of time and effort to put into those portfolios. Yeah.
Mr. CEO, just in terms of that, so would you mind just explaining again, sorry, in your mind, what commercial services looks like? What is it?
Yeah, succinctly, dams, aerodromes and sail yards. That's where we're going. So we've also moved property leases into commercial services. This is where this is really good because I can now be, if I may be bold, may have been waiting for this. So we can now start to marry the language up and make sure that we align. So you'd have commercial services, commercial and property services sits under the communities manager, community and lifestyle manager. Parks, the language of parks is changing. Oh, excuse me, parks and open spaces, and it's facilities is buildings, parks. So there's some language change in here that would be now neither's right or wrong. It will just be to align the language so that they're both the same. So, but yeah, so certainly to answer your question is commercial services at the minute. So cemetery still sits with parks. The dams has been moved away from parks because the dams are starting to hit their straps as a commercial entity, and this last year in particular, and acknowledge Peter and particularly Michael Hunter, is that they actually made money last year, real money for a change, not the $1 million that's often talked about in history as with fond memory, but well, how that was accounted in the day is a long debate. But so I think I said to you 18 months ago, maybe 2 years at the beginning of the term, if you want us to run them as a commercial entity, they'll run as a commercial entity. that's where we are. So yeah, so that's where I see commercial. That's what I see. We see. I use the royal we, but I see commercial services at the moment. There is some discussion about what other aspects could go with that, but certainly property leases is moving. We can put that into the community and lifestyle manager. That's looking to be in the community and lifestyle manager area of responsibility. And everything we're doing with the service mapping is actually arts. So, and actually the term coordinator in your portfolio report, and I'll just get this off my chest now, you'll see coordinator a lot more. We've had team leaders, we've had coordinators, we've had a mix of language in this space. So everything that was a team leader is now being renamed a coordinator. So there's a consistent language, and certainly with the portfolio report as well, Carolyn and her team, we've been going through all that background documentation, and this is once, I won't say once in a lifetime, but once in recent history for the organisation, where we're aligning and making common all of our language. So as we're doing this, so again, it's that boring background stuff, but as we're doing it, we're just aligning everything so the language is the same. So moving forward, we've got a point.
Yeah, and when the report comes back, Mr. CEO, you'll have that language modified to align with the structure. Yeah, thanks very much. Okay, commercial services, we now understand what it means. Where do we see it as going? Councillor Erkins?
I understand completely, what Councillor Jones is saying, and I think he's probably right. I think coming into it with not a lot of experience in some of those things, maybe sport and recreation is something that somebody else could take, because it may be too much for me to do, and I'd rather take on something I can handle rather than too much and not be able to do the job. But I just don't know whether, from what everyone's saying as to what is involved, maybe we should have just had a workshop where everything can be explained as to what, maybe we can come back to it with the new way you're doing. Sorry, Mark, what is it? The new structure, and then at it, Mark can actually explain what comes under each one, so that councillors then can be aware of what actually does come under where to do it. Because I don't really want to be taking on more than what I can handle, especially coming into it new. But tourism, I think I could possibly, that would be good. I think, I could handle that all right. And the commercial services is probably stuff I've got experience in.
Matt, just do you want to just scroll back to the top? Go back to the amendment there where there's the following portfolios are assigned. Councillor, could I, because we can have, as I said, I would really been wanting to bring a report back on the function mapping particularly as we roll through, and there's a swag of, and it'll come up in the Vic workshop and Councillor Duff's notice of motion. There's a swag of consultation and industrial requirements for moving staff about. So it's a slow, laborious process sometimes that you just can't go ding, you're that now. If council was, rather than certainly workshops, absolutely, I'm away for the next fortnight, but back in August, not that means anything, but I really need some sort of guidance as to what your mind is as a body corporate as to how these roll, and then we can align. So rather than holding it up for another month and workshopping, could we just add that the committee recommends, or could drop out the committee, that the following portfolios be used as a guide for the CEO to bring back a report to the August Standing Committee, and then we'll marry this up with so they'll probably be separate, but we can marry this up with the function mapping of the organisation, and then that way it just doesn't hold us up for another month. And as I said, I can chuck a couple other thoughts in there, and council can have a range of options. Business as usual with 3. This is, do we go back? It'll give me a guide of something to work with, and as I said, my mind's just ticking over at a million miles an hour of thinking, okay, I can change that language, or I can change this language, I can move in that way. Mayor, I can bring back something. The part of the problem I've had with the portfolio report is I just haven't known council's mind as to how you wanted to move forward on this, and hence the recommendation has been blank. But yeah, if I could use this as a guide, I can have a report back on it to the August meeting, and then some firm decisions can be made. And even if they don't take effect until first month of second quarter, which is October, but anyway, yeah, we can timeframes. Happy to move quickly or hasten slowly.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. CEO. Certainly happy to take that advice and give you time to do that function mapping and create that alignment. So, Councillor Shoemaker, are you comfortable with the CEO's slight change to the recommendation?
Yes, absolutely. I was just thinking about some of the things Councillor Erkins had mentioned, and certainly, yes, tourism is a giant portfolio, and unfortunately, I've been so stretched across so many different things. I haven't spent enough time on that portfolio. I definitely recognise that. We have come a long way though, because when I first started, I can tell you the first tourism meeting I walked into wasn't very polite, and so I can certainly recognise how hard it is being new to the table and being given a hefty portfolio, because I think we've all been there, and unfortunately that's a learning curve that we've all been on, and unfortunately it won't be any different for you. The only thing I was thinking with the commercial services portfolio is I can see real synergy there from a tourism point of view, with the dams and the sale yards being potential tourism assets, and the marketing of those facilities and that bigger picture story, I think, does feed into that tourism portfolio. And certainly I know Councillor Henson being rural and rural services, I think that doesn't take away from the important role that both you and Councillor Duff play on the Coolabunnya Sale Yard Working Group. And from a facilities point of view, I think that again requires collaboration, and probably what I have seen work quite well, it's certainly, we've had our L plates on and sometimes worked better than others, but there are great opportunities to learn from each other and collaborate in some of these things. So yeah, I think the work with commercial services sitting at it and thinking about where we've wanted to go with our dams and things, and the fact that we haven't been marketing them effectively, I think there's a whole bigger picture story there, and I think you'd bring a lot to the table. And sport and recreation are key. Sports tourism for this region is enormous, and that is actually something that as a council, whilst we support industry-led tourism outcomes in terms of partnerships and collaborations, sport and recreational tourism, we really do need to be thinking bigger picture about that, and that's an enormous tourism part of your tourism portfolio. So I think for this council to focus on tourism in a more concentrated effort like that would be really effective.
Councillor Henson.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you. Yes, thank you, Councillor Shoemaker. I was going to suggest I would be happy to take on the commercial services, and like tourism, it also does lend itself in line with NRM, agriculture, industry, environment, and the rural sector and rural services. I don't see too many, and there's 3 or 4 things that fold in with commercial services and certainly tourism, and I think can work hand in hand with them anyway, as portfolio holders try and do anyway across that entire board. So whether it's your portfolio or not, whether it's sport and rec, I'm sure if in any shape or form, if that's got something to do with rural services or the agricultural industry or the environment, I'm happy to work with that portfolio holder. So yeah, I was just going to suggest that I'd be happy. And as the CEO has mentioned some direction on it, I'd be happy to take that commercial services on. Oh, you do want it? Okay, yeah. That's fine. That's fine.
I think that there'll always be opportunity if you're working on the sale yards, for example, or Councillor Henson's got something to add. I'd hope that you'd link up and work together anyway. Yeah, certainly doesn't deny the opportunity to work together. So we've moved it, we've seconded it, we've discussed it. We'll go to the vote. Those in favour, carry unanimously. Thank you all. Oh, the amendment now becomes the substantive resolution. I often forget that. Thank you, Mr. CEO. Just a bit more for you to do there, Bree. Yeah. Okay, so we have the motion as presented, moved and seconded. Any further speakers? We'll go to the vote on the substantive motion. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Okay, now 8.3 LGAQ 126th Annual Conference motion request at 42. Okay, Councillor Potter, thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've actually sent one through to Bree already, and that is that the LGAQ advocate for more funding for domestic violence in rural, regional and remote areas, as more allocation of funds is needed for councillors and grant support for all people in a DV situation, including the people and organisations that support them. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Potter. Councillor Shoemaker.
That's a great motion, Councillor Potter. One that I haven't quite got the wording quite right, but it would be something like that the state government amend the Wind Farm Code 23 and Solar Farm Code guidelines to enforce in the Wind Farm Code 23 brief and Solar Farm Code guidelines to regulate broader community consultation and social license to operate requirements. License to operate requirements, yeah.
Thank you, councillors. Other councillors, anything further?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
That we call on the state government to increase the, whatever that one is called, the road maintenance budget, because I know it hasn't been increased since, no, not the fags, the actual road maintenance budget for the state roads. What's it called? RMPC, because it hasn't been increased since amalgamation.
Light. Just your light, thanks.
That we call on the state government to increase the RMPC funding, the RMPC, it's Road Maintenance Performance Contract, the Road Maintenance Performance Contract funding. I'll probably look to General Manager Tim, Acting General Manager Tim, just with regards to wording around, like it hasn't been increased for so long, like in line with CPI, or how would?
Rising.
Sorry, councillor, what were you trying to achieve?
I'm just trying to get them to realise that we're falling behind. We can't keep up with our road maintenance for the state-controlled roads because we're trying to slash the roads, we're trying to fix the potholes. We just because it hasn't been increased. It hasn't been increased since amalgamation, and we just can't keep doing what we're doing.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's why we're
Do you want to leave it broad to better reflect service level?
To better reflect the to meet and safety expectations. It's a safety issue because we're stretching out our slashing. We're just stretching out everything we possibly can because we haven't got the funding. Yes, in particular, the rural.
Okay, so Bree, what if we say to increase the RMPC funding to rural/regional councils so as to better reflect the transport asset maintenance requirements. Happy with that, Councillor Duff? Yeah.
Yes, Mr Mayor.
Okay.
Yeah,
Councillor
Mr.
Jones?
Mayor, just to the CEO, are we going to, I suppose we won't have to put it in because we always flog the same horse about trying to get LGAQ to go the FAGS grants, and the old one that we've always been interested in is the grazing permits on roads and all that.
We won the grazing permits last year after all those years, so that one went through.
Yeah.
Financial assistance grants is part of the LGAQ, so I mean you could, but Alga, I think it went through to Alga again this last year, so everyone's on the same page with that. LGAQ notes the increase, so part of the language I use for RMPC, which I was just looking for, increased funding in Department of Transport and Road Roads performance contracts to cover the significant number of unfunded defects that exist on state-controlled network, and amend the RMPC to ensure current conditional indemnities do not unfairly favour DTMR services and circumstances where state-controlled network is in poor condition. So we could steal out of the LGAQ and support that position, Mayor, if that helps.
Yes, thank you, Mr CEO.
Got all that, Bree?
You'd be a magician to get all that, Bree. We'll just get that in there. Thanks, Mr CEO. Just while Bree's doing that, the other one just to, I suppose, consider at 43, at the bottom of page 43, was something we discussed a little while back in terms of the work undertaken by the Victorian government in conjunction with the federal government around a regional public housing program. So I'm probably a little bit out of date now because that was a few months ago when we discussed this. But my understanding was that they had a multi-million-dollar investment in building public housing in the regions, and that the social housing framework was such that the government would own the assets and then offer them for rent at a maximum of 30% of median income. So they determined the median income in Victoria, in regional Victoria, and then the rent would be no more than 30% of that, and 10% under the median market rate, which I guess I'd have to try to understand what that means. But it's probably want to be brought up to date on that. What Councillors Shoemaker and Potter, would that be something that we should consider in terms of investment in regional public housing, or is there other things happening that I'm not aware of here? Keen to hear your thoughts. Yeah.
I think that's a great, I'd like to look into those figures. Sorry, Mr Mayor, I think that's great, but I'd like to look into those figures a little bit more before we set that one in stone, because I know sort of we are doing a lot of work in that space with the state government, different state government bodies. So I would just like to look into those figures with Councillor Shoemaker. Thanks.
So that being the case, and I'll go to Councillor Shoemaker for her thoughts as well, of maybe whether we could just flag regional public housing or something, or regional housing mark, and then we could flesh it out later as to actually what that motion would look like. But anyway, that's a suggestion. Councillor Shoemaker, your thoughts?
Yes, Mr Mayor, certainly through the LGAQ policy documents, and I've had words with our policy executive about the housing action plan that they've developed and released. I think the state certainly put some big numbers around different funding streams and ideas. How they'll come to fruition in regions like ours is yet to be fully understood. I know they're keen, and I know we've got a few things in the pipeline, but I'm thinking maybe just for the purpose of this, it's about, that the state government invest and back the LGAQ housing action plan, and continue to fund state government invest and back the LGAQ Housing Action Plan and fund social and affordable housing outcomes in regional Queensland, and maybe before and fund. And prioritise, so action plan and prioritise funding. So after that. Yep, funding for social and affordable housing outcomes in regional Queensland, because when we are in the pipeline, we're up against the metropolitan cities that and areas like the Sunshine Coast that are experiencing exactly the same things as us. But their ability to raise revenue or housing outcomes because of the state and private sector investment. And I think there is a piece in there about also another point, sorry, Bree, go down one, is that the state government develop and invest in core trunk infrastructure, yep, that is impeding IMP, so yep, growth in housing in regional Queensland. There needs to be a bit of work done on that, but we know that is certainly for our region, that's a reality. The cost of actually investing in the trunk infrastructure, our councils offered those development incentives, but the reality is we actually need state government to come to the party and help us with some of these things. And there needs to be a funding program for that so that we can get more of that infrastructure in place and fast track some of these developments. So I'm not sure that's the right wording, Mr. Mayor, but I think you know what I'm talking about. And I think that is a consideration that has come up through the housing working group, that we do need that trunk infrastructure and some sort of investment or skin in the game from state government to help those housing outcomes be achieved. So happy to work with CEO Mike to flesh that out and get that right.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Shoemaker. And I do believe that was something that did happen in previous, in days gone by, terms gone by of shire councils where that state funding program was in fact available for core truck infrastructure. So, yeah, really good point. Councillor Potter, your thoughts?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd also like to have a motion that we send through with regards to the university study centres as well. So whether it's be something like we ask the LGAQ to advocate for more funding towards university study centres within the rural, regional, and remote communities. But I would take your ideas on wording for that one. Thank you.
Yeah, so that's probably asking the LGAQ to make representation, Mark, to the state to push that up to the federal government in terms of the allocation of funding for country university centres throughout regional Queensland. Yeah. I'll just backspace that one, Bree. So someone there on the lines of that the state government develop a process of, I'm struggling for words here, but just to see our process of advocacy to the Australian government in relation to regional university centres across rural Queensland. probably not my best work, but can we tweak that later, Mr CEO? I don't know about developing a process, but my understanding is it's a federally funded program. I think the one at St George came from the feds, so Mount Isa came from the feds. They're in this space, are they? Yeah. So maybe we can have a look at that. You can do some further research, but if that at least gets it down on paper, Councillor Potter. Yeah, Councillor Duff?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just one about the GPs, like the fact that concern that's been raised with Dr McAllister and the GP, something around, you know, I don't know, that we advocate to the state government to create incentives for, you know, create incentives for. So the concern is that there's a lot, they're not even studying to be GPs. So I'm just, yeah. So, just.
So the state, federal government obviously has control of the responsibilities the system, and also the university funding goes to places available for studying medicine. Maybe. Well, thank you, Bree. Making representation to the Queensland Government in relation to initiatives. Yeah. They'll need to obviously do a body of work there with the AMA and other organisations to frame that up. But the state government make representation to the federal government in relation to increasing primary healthcare services, in brackets general practitioners, across suburban and regional Queensland. Certainly, from what I'm told by Dr McAllister, it's not just an issue in rural or regional Queensland, but it's an issue in the outer suburbs of the cities as well, that there's a major shortage as we see urban sprawl in those outer suburbs, yeah. Again, not my best work, but Mr CEO, perhaps you could put your wordsmithing skills to that and also look at, you know, what would be appropriate. Probably something we'd want to confer with the LGAQ on before we actually put that forward, I would have thought. They may have work in progress or they may see it as being outside their scope.
And we can put these all up to next week's ordinary. And once they endorse whether they get submitted or not, well, then that we can go from there. But they do need that resolution to go in. So we whack them through next week and then can refine them in early August when I get back from leave. Yep.
Yeah, and that way, Mr CEO, you can then, in that process of refining them when you get back from leave, as part of that process, if you can confer with your colleagues at the LGAQ to make sure that whatever we put forward is going to be not inconsistent or not going to be trumping anything that they're already doing. Yeah, thank you. Councillor Duff, you comfortable with that?
I just wanted to flag one more. I don't know whether we can make a resolution around it or whether, but I know that Councillor Potter has raised it with me before, and I think maybe Councillor Erkins, but just about the social housing, and even if you do have social houses, that they actually don't necessarily come back to the person in the list can be people outside our region rather than people inside our region. Is there anything around that because unless you've got a lot of people already have put their name down for social housing, you're not necessarily going to get your locals into houses. They can be out of the region. I just wondered around if there's anything around that.
Yeah, I guess we'll have to probably see Councillor Potter and Councillor Shoemaker's thoughts on that, but the social housing assessment and allocation process is well defined in regulation, and I know Regional Housing Limited are very well aware of the process. whether you can actually seek to advocate to have that, I suppose, change such that it becomes more of the criteria around local placement becomes stronger, so that there's a greater criteria for the assessment panel to consider local placement. I don't know. What are you thinking, Councillor Potter?
Yeah, through you, Mr Mayor. That's a really tough one, actually, Councillor Duff, as much as we'd like to see that. But when the people put in the housing application, they can put in whichever area they want. And if they're high on the list and they've put a house in for the South Burnett, they will be put into the South Burnett, into that house if it's free. So we don't have any say on what the state, but I mean, that's something we can maybe advocate for, that, you know, because, you know, as much as we'd love it to be our people, who are we to say that their needs aren't greater than somebody else? So, but look, we can always ask state, we can always ask Department of Housing and see how that works. But yeah, that's something we probably need to check with. Even regional housing might even be able to answer that question as well. So we'll be chatting with him on Friday. So look, we might be able to ask him then.
It might be a good point of discussion at the forum where we've got some of those agencies there who are have a very good understanding in this space. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Councillor Shoemaker?
Yeah, I think that's probably, we need to probably talk to our community support agencies and get a bit more feedback in relation to that one. Like I know based on a recent report from the Department of Communities, there's like 189 people on a waiting list for housing in our region. And the reality is that there's not enough social housing properties to fill the need, and there hasn't been for a very long time. So yeah, I'm not really sure. I see what you're getting at, and yeah, I'm not really sure, because I think a lot of those decisions are often out of our hands and in the hands of those who have either made the referral or know the situation. So, you know, I think that's why a lot of elderly people or single women in the age of 50s and 60s are in that high needs category, because often they're competing against a family of 5 for a house, and I think they allocate housing more on, you know, highest need and bedrooms, you know, which is a reality. But I think there's certainly some more conversations we can have about that.
I guess the other side to the coin is that we may not want to create a situation whereby we have local people who are really high on the assessment criteria that may be able to be placed somewhere else in another region. And we might actually make it more difficult for them then to actually leave our region and find a home in another area if they're going to be disadvantaged under the criteria where they might otherwise be seen as high in the ranking. So it could be a bit of a double-edged sword, that one.
Yeah, happy to leave it and till after the housing forum and not progress it through this process.
And I think after the housing forum, you know, this will come through in August, Mr. CEO, anyway, won't it? So I imagine there'd be opportunity still to bring something back as a special motion later on, perhaps, Mr. CEO, if you really felt passionate about putting it forward, or not, no time frame after 22nd July.
Yeah, it's due on the LGAQ resolutions are due on the 10th of August, so you won't get another ordinary after next week.
Oh, okay, sorry, yeah. Thank you, Mr. CEO. Councillor Erkins.
So I'm not sure if this is something that we're looking for, but the state government approached the federal government about giving incentives to private enterprise to build houses for rental.
Yes. So that is happening in our program in Queensland already. And I guess it's probably that'll be another good point of discussion at the forum, where we will have those bodies there to be able to perhaps explain that, if you have questions around that.
Because while everyone's talking about government housing or you know, housing, state housing, I know that we've got units in Nanango that the managers of that from one of those government organisations told me that they could not put tenants into it because of the bad tenants they had in some of the other units, so other people wouldn't go into it. So the private one you quite often find are better managed. They make better neighbours as well.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point. We can flesh that out at the forum and then bring that back. But probably a good point of discussion for that housing forum. I think Councillor Erkins, yeah. Okay, good. All right. Well, we've got that, Mr. CEO. I'm just conscious of time, Council. It's 4:35, I think. We've got a fair bit to get through yet. So we'll wrap up there. We'll go to the vote. We'll need a mover. We have a mover. Councillor Duff, thank you. A second, Councillor Henson. Shall we go to the vote? Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Okay. Council nominate the 2023 special holiday at 45. Thank you, Mr. CEO.
Thanks, Mayor. This one's quite monotonous as it comes up every year. The show holidays assigned to the first Monday of the exhibition week, and we just need a resolution so we can send it back to the department to have it published in the Gazette and gazetted as a show holiday.
Same as last year, Mr. CEO? Exactly. Okay, good, thank you. So, as presented, Council, do we have a mover? Yes, Councillor Potter, seconder.
There's a mistake.
Oh, there's a mistake. Sorry. Yes, Councillor Henson.
Yeah. Well, no, it says August 2022.
Monday the 14th is in fact Monday the 15th. Sorry, if we look in our calendar, we're on this date.
You've been very diligent there, Councillor Henson. Monday the 15th of August, is it?
It is actually Monday the 15th, and then our recommendation, it says Monday the 14th, 2022. No, August 2022 as the 23 show holiday. Sorry, I've read and reread that. It says Monday the 15th of August it said the 14th of August 2022, but it's actually the 15th of August 22 and as the 23 show holiday for the region. So
Lost me.
Where are you looking?
says,
Monday the 14th of August 2023.
yeah, but it says 2022 there.
We just got the wrong year.
It said Monday the 14th, August 22 is what it says.
But it should be just say 23.
23.
Mine is technicality, I'm sorry, but I went through the diary. It's the 15th on the Monday.
It must be something to do with
That's
that.
right, it's the 15th on the 23rd, but it said the 14th on the 22nd. So
Yes.
one or the other.
So we just changed that to 23. Bree's got that. Thank you, Bree. Must be that wig. No, that's fine. Thank you, Councillor Henson. I'll put it down to the fact that it's something to do with that hat you're wearing, that wig you're wearing today. Okay. Councillor Shoemaker.
I don't know if this is relevant, but should I declare a conflict of interest because that's the day after my birthday? So of course I am going to support that, but I don't know.
No.
Can I vote on that?
Well, you can.
I do have a self-interest in this, so maybe I should leave the room.
Well,
It's the 13th. Yeah.
yeah, I think.
Should I leave? Or...
No.
No, that's okay.
We won't. If we get to that point, I think we're in all sorts of trouble, aren't we? So Councillor Potter, Councillor Shoemaker seconded, Henson seconded, sorry. And further speakers, Councillor Erkins, have you got your light on?
No, sorry.
Oh, okay. No further speakers. We'll go to the vote. Those in favour? Carry unanimously. Thank you all. Okay. Australia Day nomination forms and location at 47. Okay. Thanks, Mr. CEO.
Thanks, Mayor, and through the chair. So, council's already decided next year, given the celebrations, Australia Day is in Nanango. The forms to be approved, the location. So we'll need somewhere in Nanango to hold it, and be it showgrounds or be wherever. The other part is on what day. So now while we're talking about Australia Day next year, I'll just bring up the calendar. Yep. So Australia Day itself is, that's Australia 26th of January is on the Friday, Thursday, sorry. 26th, 26th. Yep, I'm in 24. I was already in August 23 from Councillor before, 26th, yep. So night before or the Sunday before or just chasing. How do you want to run it?
Okay, I think we'll open this one to the floor. First of all, location. Divisional Councillor Jones, this is your division.
Well, no, Councillor Erkins, but yeah, that's Division 1, Nanango Showcase.
Yeah, I was actually probably just wanting to get a rise out of Councillor Erkins, but it's getting late in the day. We've got to have some humour, councillors. Two divisional councillors. What are your thoughts? Showgrounds? Councillor
Do you
Erkins?
think, sorry, I'm just wondering how many people, I've been to them before and they've been at the cultural centre. Just for the nighttime one, I just don't know how many
So this
people.
is the large South Burnett Council Awards. It's
Yeah.
a fairly significant
Oh,
event.
All right,
Yeah.
showground.
It'll be a large crowd.
All right.
Okay, so we've got consensus on the showgrounds from our divisional councillors. Okay, Councillor Potter, the date.
Yeah, Mr Mayor, look, I think I like the idea of having it on the weekend before Australia Day. So just looking at mine, so that would be on, say, Sunday, the 22nd of January. And I just think because that way it gives more families a chance to go. They can go as a whole family, and especially being at the showgrounds, there's a huge place there that you can spread out. So I think you can nearly make a really good day out of it at Nanango.
Thank you, Councillor Potter. Can we take that moved by Councillor Erkins? Happy to move that? Yes?
Yes, Mr Mayor. Oh, is it going to be a daytime or a nighttime?
Lunchtime.
A lunchtime. Are we going to
You're on the barbecue.
Yep.
that because NAPTA actually have a breakfast on the day of Australia Day. So
That's fine,
I'm
yep.
just thinking who's going to be doing a council going to be organising the lunch then, because I think NAPTA, if you're relying on NAPTA, no, that's good. Yep.
Yeah, so it's organised and run by council. Yeah. Okay, so we have Councillor Jones.
Yeah. Saturday or a Sunday? What's the significance of a Sunday? Why do we have it on a Sunday? Throw out a Saturday, the 21st, whatever. Why has it got to be on a Sunday?
Councillor
Just a
Potter?
question.
Yes, through you, Mr Mayor, I can actually answer that one quite well, because you still have people in businesses that still are working in their shops that may want to attend. And a lot of them are working on Saturdays. Sometimes they don't finish till 2, 3 later on that day. So that's the reason. I think Sunday most, you've got your other businesses like your IGAs that are open, but I think on a Sunday most people are free, and that's the only reason.
Yeah. Thank you for clarifying, Councillor Potter. And Councillor Jones, you should know better than to ask that question. The races are on a Saturday. But anyway, we'll go to Councillor Duff. Councillor Duff.
Through you, Mr Mayor, just on the nomination form, I know every year we always extend the nomination form. I'm just wondering, could we just do that as a matter of course to have longer time to nominate, because it closes and people haven't even thought about it. So I just thought if we gave them that extra time. Well, when do we normally close it? It's November. It's usually sometime in November, and then we end up bringing it to later.
They're set for Friday, the 11th of November. Do you want to give them an extra week? Yeah.
And you'll say no one's got any nominations in, you still have to do it. I reckon just leave it.
Then we
So,
just-
Councillor, probably my
And then
question
it's
to you would be, does it matter when the date is, or is it just that we need to advertise it more and
Maybe-
make sure we get people, because we've still got to have the judging panel do their work. We've got a lot of work that we do behind the scenes in exec services to get awards prepared, to get people organised with their families. We've got to be careful here.
Well, maybe we need to start advertising it earlier, because it always ends up we haven't got anybody and then we have to extend it. So I'm just thinking, just maybe start advertising it earlier.
Well, we can take that on board, Mr CEO, through media and comms, yeah.
It's we're all having the same conversation. So the moment these forms and we have a venue and date, so last week of July, first week of August, it starts going out now. So yeah, no.
Thank you, Mr CEO. So if we could have do we have a mover and a seconder yet, Bree? Yes, we do. James moved it, and Danita, Councillor Potter has seconded it. Thank you. Further comments? We'll go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried by 6 councillors. Just noting that Councillor Henson had to pop out. Okay, adoption of the Southern Regional Council Ringsfield House Advisory Committee terms of reference strategic 023 at 52. And Manager Carolyn, can we bring you in here? Thank you.
Through you, Mr Mayor. Certainly this process of reviewing this policy, I have to commend the 3 councillors that were involved in this process. It was a great collaboration of minds in terms of the changes that you see before you, along with General Manager Peter O'May and his staff. So certainly attribute the changes to their enthusiasm to get it right in this particular draft. And so it's the annual review of this particular policy and on the cusp of the new community and lifestyle branch.
Thank you very much, Manager. So we have the recommendation to Council that the terms of reference be adopted as presented. Do we have a mover? Councillor Erkins, thank you. Seconded, Councillor Duff. Speakers, we're comfortable with the document? We'll go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 21-22 end of financial year stock take at 58. Recommendation is that Southern Regional Council are aware of the reasoning behind the stock take variances in inventory and the report is received for information. Do we have a mover? Councillor Potter, seconded Councillor Henson. Speakers? Councillor Shoemaker. Thank you.
I was just going to commend the effort. If I've read this correctly, there was only a minor loss indicated in the stock take, which I know can be often attributed to things that go missing out of stores, of $2,000. And for comparison, the end of financial year stock take for 2021 financial year was a total variation value of $42,363.47. I just wanted to understand that variation. What does that actually mean? General Manager Susan.
Thank you, Councillor. Yes,
Thank you.
General
Through you,
Manager.
Mr Mayor. That's a good question, Councillor, because when I read it, I went, oh my God, and then I reflected back. And first of all, I just want to acknowledge the staff down there in the depot, are led by Louise, and we have a full-time officer down there. That she did steal her from my finance team, but Liz Dowling is down there now, and Liz has been instrumental in redoing all of the stock and the inventories. That figure is a little bit misleading. They're actually the books that we give to, yeah, the CEO might be responsible for that.
Sorry, it's just the language. Last year with the books and the write-offs and everything, we had a significant loss of 42,000. So that was the number out of last year's report. So, and it's been placed for comparison. So with Susan and the team tidying everything up last year, they did the big tidy up and we went, it was like the rates and everything else was one of those bubbles that were coming through historic, because all that stock had been sitting there forever and everyone going, oh, do I? And we bit the bullet. This year, it's an absolute credit. So we lost $2,000 this year, and the year before we lost 42,000. So yeah, so sorry if the variation value, that was a direct lift out of last year's report, that's all. Sorry.
And yes, they're those beautiful red-bound South Burnett history books that we give citizens. Yeah, and we wrote it all off last year. That's right. Thank you very much. It's excellent work to the team.
Thank you, General Manager. Thank you, Mr CEO. Okay, so do we have a mover and a seconder? Yes, we do. Shall we go to the vote? Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. I'd now like to welcome Councillor Shoemaker to present her Regional Development Portfolio Report, which we can find at page 59. Thank you, Councillor.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. Certainly it's been a big week, and as attached, I attached the Australian Bureau of Statistics, the initial data that they've released from the 2021 census, mainly just so that you had a copy of it and could have a look at there's comparative data there for the 2016 census. I know it's not exactly the same, but I thought it's a good thing for us to be aware of. And to be honest, I'd really like to see our council workshop that data, particularly when the agricultural census and these sorts of things come through. Maybe that's something we could do with one of our partners like Department of State Development or alike, just to identify some of those trends and opportunities and where the challenges or the barriers are. And I think it's just good context for us all. Just interesting to see here. I am paraphrasing, but I definitely think we've got great reasons to be optimistic about our future. Our population has finally grown, which is a wonderful outcome. And I've actually written the wrong number there, sorry. It's 32,996 people. Bree, if I can fix that in my report. And from some of the research I've done, it seems that Kingaroy's grown the most. Our second largest town being Nanango is second to that, and Mergen's population has actually declined. Wandai, Sherbrooke, Yarraman, Blackbutt all running quite strong there. So just good if you get a chance to have a look at the results, and I think it would be something worthwhile us workshopping into the future. Other key priorities I've progressed is the National Water Infrastructure Development Fund Phase 2, and I know we have a briefing to Council scheduled for the 2nd of August. I'd certainly urge you all to prioritise that in your calendars. It's getting exciting as we've been working along stakeholders with a vision to improve the reliability and security of water in the South Burnett region. Since the commencement of Phase 2 of the National Water Infrastructure Development Fund, the KBR team has been working with Council and key stakeholders to advance the Blackbutt Irrigation Investment Logic Map, the hydrological modelling to estimate the increase in reliability of Barker-Baramba water supply scheme under various scenarios based on the feedback provided by stakeholders during the initial engagement phase, the Gordon Brook Dam review of water plan and available water licences, Blackbutt Economic Assessment and Demand Assessment, Gordon Brook Demand Assessment, Baramba Demand Assessment, Regional Soil and Climate Assessment, and the Commodity Export Potential. So there's some exciting projects in the wind there. A key focus for the year ahead will be to continue to participate and work with Sunwater, who are undertaking a regional water assessment of the Bundaberg and Burnett regions. The findings of the strategic business case for water supply requirements in the North and South Burnett will feed into this process, as the first stage of the assessment is to understand the region's water demand. This is timely as the recent demand assessments we have undertaken will be considered and help to ensure our region's projects are represented. I've been attending the stakeholder advisory group meetings and advocating the South Burnett's position at every available opportunity. And I will see, just talking with certainly Joanne today around getting some media out, because it seems Sunwater want to go back out to the community and ask for all of your long list options of water projects again. And I think it's important. While I completely appreciate that everyone's got some fatigue in this area because we've been working on it for a very long time, I think we do have a core role in encouraging our community to continue to put their projects and their ideas forward. And there is an online platform for them to do that I've just received an update about, and we'll make sure we get some media around that. Toowoomba and Surat Basin's Enterprise Evening. It was wonderful to join Councillor Henshin and CEO Mark in Chinchilla on the 7th of July last week. We met with Cubico Sustainable Investments Australia, Stanwell and Powerlink, who spoke about the Wombo Wind Farm project, the important milestones and supply chain opportunities. The Wombo Wind Farm is a wind energy development located near Jindawi in the Western Downs region of Queensland. However, the transmission network will traverse the South Burnett local government area. The project, which is due for completion in 2024, will feature up to 110 turbines, contributing approximately 500 megawatts of renewable energy to the national electricity grid. The site will also include a 50 megawatt battery storage and associated infrastructure. It will help the Queensland Government reach its renewable energy target of 50% by 2030 as the state transitions to a lower carbon emissions future. Wombo Wind Farm is focused on supporting the Western Downs by employing local labour, engaging local businesses and sourcing local supplies wherever possible. Wind farms are certainly labour intensive during construction, and there may be opportunity for South Burnett businesses or available workforce to be involved in the project. Wombo Wind Farm will require around 200 workers during this phase. Once the project is operational, staffing is streamlined and there will be around 20 equivalent full-time staff required to maintain and manage the Wombo site. Cubico Sustainable Investments Australia is excited to be supporting local Queensland industry by building the Wombo Wind Farm with maximum local input, and there are learnings from this that we may be able to take into the construction of similar projects in our region. It was wonderful to see the Western Downs has been working with Toowoomba and Surat Basin Enterprises and Cubico, and they've developed a local prospectus for all the local buy opportunities for that project. And as I've talked about in this chamber before, I think it will be important for us to develop a very similar project so that when a renewable energy proponent comes to town and says we are going to invest in your local community during the construction of our build, we can say, well, this is the expectation. These are all of the local suppliers that have indicated an interest, and we absolutely want to see you doing all you can to engage them in the process. So I think really I'm passionate about that project. We've talked about the Housing and Homelessness Forum today on the 22nd of July. I just want to highlight it's been wonderful to work in collaboration with groups including South Burnett CTC, Q Shelter Regional Housing, and grateful for the sponsorship of Stanwell's Tron Power Station and Meandu Mine. The details are there. If you haven't registered, please register. Please get the information out and help us to get as many people with a housing interest from across our region at the table and at that forum next week. And I just wanted to give you a bit of an update on the LGAQ Civic Leaders Forum. The theme was People, Purpose and Impact, and it was from the 29th to the 30th of June in the Sunshine Coast. A key element of the forum were the discussions about how to create a livable community. Livable communities offer choice, are made up of great places, are varied, look after all residents, integrate nature, and know and nurture their economy. I've been working with the Department of State Development, who are supporting me to coordinate the next Regional Development Advisory Committee meeting, where we aim to unpack what a livable community means for us here in the South Burnett. Some of the ideas I collected from the LGAQ Civic Leaders Forum included what some of the elements of a thriving, livable community are, which is thinking about habitat for humans. We are a species and we need to be an environment that makes us feel good. Creating strong regional or city centre for people. We're social animals, we like to herd and need to feel a sense of place. Establishing distinct neighbourhoods, making walking, cycling and transit delightful, designing places for people, fostering natural beauty, enhancing agricultural integrity, and making it all work together to offer a unique experience. At the forum, a presenter from Ernest Young, Elizabeth Rose, posed the question, are you reframing your future or is your future reframing you? And we explored change in the sense that it is inevitable, and how we as a council respond and adapt to change in a rapidly changing world is important. I think it's relevant to many of the discussions we've had in this chamber and something we as a team really must consider. We also explored the S-curve pattern of growth and the new S-curve post-pandemic and 4 key megatrends challenging our traditional views of livability, being decarbonisation, behavioural economy, trust and future thinking, work and life unbounded. And by that they meant, you know, they're post the pandemic and due to the digital economy and the way in which we live online these days, there really is no job that you can't do from your home in many respects. So there is an exciting opportunity for regions like ours. Sustainability is critically important to livability. We explored the relevance of sustainable development goals to councils and how these could be considered in our strategic thinking and long-term planning for our region. I look forward to working with you, my colleagues, to further share these insights and be part of the development of council's sustainability policy over the year to come, and I recognise the synergy between these and the growth and prosperity of our region and its economy. In closing, I wanted to thank Council and the community for enabling me to participate in the Civic Leaders Forum and be part of the launch of a new leaders cohort. It's been interesting to learn that less than 10% of elected councillors across Queensland are under the age of 35. I joined LGAQ CEO Alison Smith, councillors Ryan Balden-Lumsden and Jake Jeremiah openly, and together we openly shared why we decided to put our hands up to run for elected office and spoke honestly about the challenges since being elected. As a collective, with many other local governments present, we workshopped how the sector can encourage more young people to consider running for council and the barriers for such. And it really was a really interesting panel discussion. But with that, Mr. Mayor, that's a very brief overview. I was a bit strapped for time this month, but there's some of the things that I've been working on. And I do recognise that livability pillar really is critical to us growing our economy here in the region. I know we've been talking about that for a long time, and we've all signed up for that through our corporate plan. So with that, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move that my report be accepted.
Thank you, Councillor Shoemaker. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Henson, thank you. Speakers? No? Shall we go to the vote? Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 9.2 is the Regional Development Tourism Monthly Update, and that is at 87. It's recommended that the Regional Development Tourism Monthly Update for June 2022 be received for information. Do we have a mover? Councillor Henson, seconded Councillor Potter. Speakers? We'll go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Thank you to our staff for providing that, Mr. CEO. Thank you. 9.3, sorry, yes, sorry, Councillor Henson.
It's the hat.
Mr. Fuzzy Hair.
It's the hat. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. I'd like to move a motion in relation to just that tourism. The motion being that South Burnett Regional Council investigate the costings to fund a workshop with VSB to lead to further promotion of our tourism industry and entities and identification of where they can progress further with just that, the tourism industry. That being said, sorry, Bree. Do you want me to just pass you that?
Yeah, that'd be good. Thank you.
Bottom, right in the bottom.
So, Bree, while you type that up, we'll just get Councillor Henson to talk to the motion.
While Bree's doing that, yeah, and I think I just might add to that, I think it's a fairly important time, and in relation to that with what we've discussed this morning, and tourism a very important part of this foot and mouth disease, I think in identifying that and the tourism industry, I think that's a topic that could be well discussed in promoting tourism, and a perfect opportune time for foot and mouth to come on the table at that same time. So I think that's only relevant today because of what I've said all day, and I will sound like a broken record and continue to bang on about it. But I think my motion in relation to that needs no further conversation. That I think that workshop would certainly also incorporate the conversation and the ability for our tourism body to be able to help promote just that, the foot and mouth epidemic that could be on our shorelines. So with that, I commend that motion to Council, and hope that the Chambers, if there's any further conversation, happy to discuss it, but would like to commend this to the Chambers. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
South Burnett Regional Council investigate the costings to fund a workshop with VSB to look to further promotion of our tourism industry and entities identification. But I just add in there the fact, and I don't think I can note this enough, especially with, in some form, the tourism organisations across our country, not just our VSB, perfect opportunity because of foot and mouth. Put something in there in relation to a workshop VSB to look to further promote our tourism industry and entities, and also the safety of our country with the looming foot and mouth epidemic on our doorstep. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Henson. We have a second, Councillor Shoemaker. Okay. Speakers, questions for Councillor Henson? Councillor Shoemaker.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I certainly welcome an opportunity to meet with BSB and our council to look at how they have been promoting our tourism industry and what further entities and things that they may be able to work with. I'm not sure if that would come at a cost, Councillor Henson. I'm just very mindful that there really isn't a lot of funding in our budget. So when you're talking about funding a workshop, are you talking about getting a facilitator in, or are you talking about, yeah, I guess I just probably want to understand that more, because I certainly think that could be an outcome and something we look to into the future, but I'm just not sure, yeah, how, because we have got the important task as well, which has been sitting on the to-do list for quite some time, but I know it got pushed aside because of budget and a number of other things. We really do need to meet with VSB and talk about KPIs and where they're tracking and how the year ahead's looking and all of those things. So I'm keen to progress a discussion with VSB. I certainly think it'll be important with Councillor Erkins taking on the tourism portfolio. I guess I'm just curious what you mean by funding a workshop and where, probably through you, CEO Mark, where we would fund that from.
Yes, thank you, through you, Mr Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Shoemaker. I think that's a great question and conversation, and certainly Councillor Erkins, that needs to be had with the committee of VSB, and we'll certainly love you to take... Wait till we win. Oh yeah, I like it. Wait till you step outside. I tell you, you wish you had one. Yeah, but no, on much more serious note, it's good to have a laugh in chambers. It's been a long day. It's been a long week already. Yeah, love you to take the lead on this with Visit South Burnett and the committee, and Councillor Erkins to get involved in it as well. It's well aware of costings, certainly well aware of costings, and that's a conversation that needs to be had as to how you want to progress and promote this. A facilitator, possibly so. They will cost money, well aware of that, but again, that's a conversation that I'm happy to leave in the hands of the committee of VSB and Councillor Shoemaker and Councillor Erkins. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Henson. Councillor Erkins.
If we don't finish this meeting by 5:30, I won't be able to go to the Visit South Burnett's meeting tonight at 6
Thank you,
o'clock.
Councillor Erkins. Are you speaking on behalf of Councillor Jones? He's keen to get this wrapped up.
They've got a meeting at 6 that I'm going to.
Yeah,
so-
well, Councillor Jones and I aren't doing all the talking, Councillor Erkins. But anyway, Councillor Duff, did you have anything to add? Okay, thank you. All right, it is good that we can have a bit of a laugh after what's been a big few weeks too. Okay, Councillor Duff, sorry, are you good to go? Oh, okay, so you are happy to vote. We go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Councillor Duff.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to move a motion that council supports local business groups who wish to put together and fund their own town brochures that include council assets and delegate CEO Mark to authorise the production of such.
Okay. Let's let Bree get that down while we digest it. I'd like to give Mr. CEO the opportunity to speak. Anything to add to that, Mr. CEO? So any questions in relation to that to Mr. CEO before we seek a seconder? Councillor, further explanation? Yeah. So Mr. CEO. Council assets. Yeah. Okay, we have a seconder from Councillor. Committee recommends to Council. Thanks, Bree. Yeah. You got that. Good. Thank you. Okay. Councillor Duff.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The Wando Group have expressed that they would like a different brochure, and also Proston would like to put together their own brochure. I think that they have they're talking about resourcing it themselves through, even if it went through discretionary funds or councillor or the community grants. But I think it's just a way of a couple of those, like I say, Proston and Wando are a bit concerned about their brochures, and I think rather than go make a broad brush, I know Mergen's happy with theirs, every other town is happy, but the Wando one and Councillor Henson would be well aware that they just don't think it just sits right with them. But I think that the CEO needs to have the authority to authorise that, but I think it's just a way forward. Yeah, thank you.
Councillor, when we say authorise the production of such, does that mean to authorise the inclusion of council assets?
Yes, that's what I meant, yes.
Right, so rather than the production of such.
I just meant...
Include council assets and delegate the CEO to authorise the, well, Mr. CEO, something that you're comfortable with.
I would have, prove the copy, basically it is, isn't it? Yeah. Because it wouldn't be delegate, because if an independent entity is producing its own brochure, that's its business.
Sorry, it was more. Sorry, it was more about the council, where we're including council assets.
Yep. And approve where appropriate the inclusion of council assets.
Yeah, and approve where appropriate. Bree, just backspace all of that. Take the delegate out. I don't think we need to delegate that, do we, Mr. CEO? Yeah, councillor include. And the CEO approve where appropriate the inclusion of council assets. You're comfortable with that, Mr. CEO? Thank you. Okay, speakers. Councillor Shoemaker.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I guess I'm thinking, like the conversation I had yesterday with the Wando Business Group with Councillor Duff, was they really liked the PDF and the format that you developed, CEO Mark. And I guess they're thinking about how can they include some of the information about the rail trail and the mountain bike facilities that wasn't included in the original brochure. My thinking was that if we've got that InDesign copy file, that you would just be able to insert or update that and then give them the PDF for their own production. I guess I'm thinking about how we update that to include the rail trail, because I know Wando has had an enormous amount of running events and things that have used that rail trail. We did do those brochures in-house, and it was my understanding that it was sort of an opportune moment. There was no other brochure available. VSB hadn't developed anything yet. We had some leftover money, and your team had put together some brochures based on what had been done previously to bring them all up to a standard and a similar format. And I guess I'm just thinking about how we could support these groups to see the edits that they would like, just with the rail trail edition and the mountain bike trails edition, and provide them with the PDF. So that was the discussion we had yesterday, and was I had hoped to have that discussion with you, not in open council meeting, but certainly to bring back some ideas for council. So I don't know whether I'd be keen for your feedback on that, and how we give you the time to see if your team has the in-house skills with the files that we would have to update that. I imagine it shouldn't be too complicated.
The maps we pay a license fee for a start, so we wouldn't be able to transfer them to a third party, not without going back to the provider with these. Yes, the resolution as it sits, and it's probably a broader offline conversation. There would be aspects of those brochures that there would be copyright. There would, which we can waive our bit. But yeah, I just want to, before where I put my foot is, and I know immediately I go, because when I first came to council, I allowed someone else to use one of those maps, and I got, not by council, but by the company that produced them, soundly slapped, and rightly so, because I thought they were ours, not we weren't producing them, reproducing them under license. So if council happy to work with everyone, but I think it's an offline conversation just to work out what's possible and how easy it is. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr CEO. Councillor Henson.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. Just quickly, certainly encourage, I called into one of our local service stations on the roundabout on Youngman Street only last night, and they have a display there of all the brochures, one of those Rotary ones, not one of the South Burnett in it, but there's one of every other neighbouring council or tourism spot virtually in Queensland, and I'd encourage our councillors to go and have a look at that because it is a wonderful display and we need to be on it. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you, Councillor Henson. Okay.
No.
Oh, Councillor Potter, thank you.
As a follow-on through to Councillor Henson's, I was a while ago when we were working closely with SQCT, I managed to get some of our brochures at Wellcamp Airport, and I think that that is a really big thing that we need to do because you get all the tourists coming in and out of Wellcamp, they hire the vehicles. So if we can get some brochures done up and actually out to Wellcamp Airport, that might be a really good option for you, Councillor Oakins.
Thank you, Councillor Potter. Okay. Councillor Jones.
Yes, Mr.
Oh, you
Mayor.
got to have something.
I just thought I'd participate and let you know I was still awake.
Yes.
I just happened to hear that Councillor Duff said something about maybe along the lines of community grants or discretionary funds. Now, I'm just playing the devil's advocate here. If I'm a community town and they're putting a brochure together, possibly if we were promoting council assets, I may be looking to seek funding from council to contribute because you're promoting council assets. So all I'm asking is, where does that come from? Where does that, if we're going to fund this, if there was a proposal put forward, because that's just something that if I was a local business, I'd be wanting to promote my own local business, and I would look that council, if we're promoting council dams or something like that, council should contribute. So just putting it out there, and I heard Councillor Duff say maybe discretionary funds or community grants. So I'm just concerned this will just escalate and will continue, and that every town across the region may go down this path. I'm just putting it out there so that we can address it before it happens.
Sorry, Mr CEO, you're getting it from all angles. Thank
No, that's all right. There's there's the harsh reality of life is we've got current. So the reason the summary before was reasonably.
Oh, Councillor, sorry.
Sorry.
Oh, Councillor, sorry, we're with Mr CEO.
Oh, sorry. The summary before, last year we ran out of stock. We reprinted the brochures. We had the visitor guide, and there will need to be conversations about the visitor guide because we will have two again this year being produced, one by VSB, one by South Burnett Today, or which variant that comes from, which is the old traditional guide. We had commitments to those last year, and I'm just using this as an example. It is significantly an issue that two are being produced and we're being pulled into the direction of which one do we contribute to. We've cleared all our commitments from previous, so it's a fresh slate. We have a grand total across all the VICs and the tourism assets and everything we own of $140,000 in this year's budget for tourism or marketing or thereabouts. 70,000 of that will go to VSB, and we need to do all our commitments as far as the stuff that we book into. For the VIC to be a member of VSB membership, the VICs, we pay for one membership to Southern Queensland Country Tourism, which they put up because we're out of region, because they're not servicing us. And Councillor Henson's resolution before, Councillor Erkins, welcome to tourism. Southern Queensland Country Tourism will not come out to a roundtable. They will not service us because we won't pay a membership. So this is a way, and I know the comment was before, this shouldn't be very complicated. This is an extremely complicated space. And Council's corporate plan and the guide that we use is it's industry-led, and Council's marketing budget of what limited resources we have this year, which is fine, that's what we got, is we are moving towards funding and producing our own information for our own assets, be it One Museum, be it the dams, be it, and we're starting to explore a bit of options and get stuff together that we can bring back to you. We will need to come back to Council and decide which guide, or do you want to do both? The art galleries, so the art galleries are in one of the brochures, but they're not in the other. So they'd like to be in both. So do we pick up that because they're effectively our buildings, and we are in a partnership with the galleries. We have Benduma, we have a whole raft of tourism assets, And our focus this year, as we've been saying for some period of time, now that we've cleared the decks and we know what money we've got, is to promote and produce for our own assets like any other tourism provider. The town brochures, we've got ample, well, I'll say ample stock. The last question I asked about the town brochures, which was for a totally different reason, we've got ample stock and we don't need to reprint. So there's just not it would be a waste of our money for us to reprint because we just don't need to at the minute. But certainly when those town brochures run out, whether this question is dealt with now or in 12 months' time, it will come up. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. CEO, for clarifying. And Councillor Shoemaker, we certainly won't be asking anyone that's producing their own brochures to promote our assets. If they choose to do so for their benefit, absolutely. But we as a council won't be asking them. We don't believe we would be asking them to promote our assets. We will take responsibility for managing the promotion of council-owned tourism assets ourselves. I think that is the path Mr. CEO is indicating we should seriously consider. Yeah.
And absolutely, and we're only too happy. I mean, that's the resolution, right? If someone wants some assistance and they want some copy, happy to. And if anyone has anything that they produce themselves, we would be only too pleased to distribute them through the VIX and any other mechanism we got. We can do that, and would do that for anyone who wants to produce tourism material.
Thank you, Mr. CEO. Councillor Duff, we go to Councillor Oakland. Just in terms of Councillor Jones' questions around the funding for this, could you just clarify that for
Excuse
council,
me.
please?
I think that this is just the Wando brochure. That I know there's a lot of Wando brochures, and they're going to be a long time before they probably run out, and we redo that whole lot of Wando brochures. But I just think they just want to put one together that's got the council assets, not any private businesses, just the council assets, but highlighting the rail trail and the things that matter to Wando. So I think that the Proston people, they've got the Badooma Dam and different things on their brochure that they'd rather have Proston things on their brochure. So it's just try and sort those two particular community groups that are not happy with those brochures.
Councillor Jones, just come back to you in terms of your concerns.
That's exactly right. Just listening on what the CEO's just explained, our goal is to promote as a tourism operator, for want of a better term, our own assets. So maybe if Wandai, for an example, or Proston go ahead and promote their own town, their individual towns, council can do a flyer and coincide and work together, hand both of them out together and say, this is Wandai, this is what you've got right at your doorstep of Wandai. Maybe we can do that way. It can work. Yeah, understand that. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Jones. Councillor Rickens.
Okay. This is a great opportunity for me to bring this up. Through our real estate, we have often put out just tourism things that we've just made up and printed ourselves. So I'm just thinking you could do for each town, they could do something that folds out like that, so promoting no tourism business, but promoting bird life in the area, walking trails, bike trails, the dams, not particularly tourism industry. But on the back, you could have not sell advertising, but support. So you could get on the back page, you could have this brochure is supported by, Tom Brown's Wines, South Burnett Council, nothing else about them, just who supports to put that brochure out promoting your town. Or you could do it as over a region, whatever. It wouldn't be that expensive to produce. And to me, a lot of it seems to be people are trying to promote their own business, whereas if we promoted the area as a whole and the fabulous things we've got, once people are here, it's up to that business to promote themselves, do their own brochures and have them. There's plenty of places to do it. But we have got such a wealth of tourism type things to bring people here and to go and have a look at that, we don't want to be promoting private enterprise. We need to be promoting the area as a whole. And I just think that's, and it can be sponsored. I think you'll find they're not going to be expensive. So the cost of sponsoring is, minimal.
Councillor Shoemaker.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, we have talked about these town brochures, and the reality is when we produced them, we were going off old files. It was done in good spirit and with good intentions. It's sad that we've ended up, again, having this conversation. It's probably a question on notice, CEO Mark. What I really want to understand is, can we update the PDF file electronically for Wandai and share it with the Wandai Business Group, so if they get the funding, they can print a new run of brochures. I appreciate we don't have the funding for that, but what they're asking for, I think, is really simple. They're asking for us to put a little section in the brochure that talks about the rail trail and the mountain bike tracks that were missed, and that's because they were new additions to the community in the time that the old brochure had been produced. And I just think sometimes we have to let these things go to the keeper and do what we can to support our community. So that's my question on notice. Can we update the PDF file electronically for Wandai and share it with the Wandai Business Group? And, if they're able to get the funding to print it, that's up to them. But that at least gives them something electronically that they can send out to their guests and tourists and thing that has all the information that they would like to see on it. That's my question.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Mr. CEO. And just again to clarify what Councillor Erk was saying, Council, where we're going with this is to invest in promoting council assets. And we've embarked on a process of, I suppose, us funding and supporting Visit South Burnett with an expectation that they would promote tourism across the industry more broadly. If there is a process whereby they seek to promote those attractions and features that bring people here, that would in turn then give benefits to their members or the broader sector, then that's fine. If they would seek to, even promote certain members' businesses, that's a matter for them. But certainly our view moving forward, Mr. CEO, is that we would be focused on, with the small funding we've got, promoting our council-owned assets, Councillor Erkins, our councillor-owned assets. That's where our focus is going to be. I just want to clarify that in terms of your comments, Councillor Erkins. I'm trusting you've got that. Yeah, I can just see she's not listening to me. But anyway, I just want to clarify that. Right, any further speakers? Councillor Duff.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to write a reply. Yes, I'm hoping that I can get support here, because I think it's just a matter of the Wandai people wanting to actually promote council assets, and also the Boston people as well, and that would give them an avenue to progress, because they're I think their concern is that they're not promoting private businesses. Actually, they're wanting to promote council assets, so that is a way forward. Thank you.
Right, to the vote, those in favour. Carried unanimously. Thank you all. We have 9.3 regional university centres at 104, and thank you, Mr. CEO, for providing the report that had been that I'd requested. And in the report, it outlines the services and the resources provided in these local tertiary-based study centres, and it's recommended that Council note the report for information. Do we have a mover? Councillor Henson, seconded Councillor Potter. Any questions? To the vote, those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. And the final item is 10.1 at page 110, which, sorry, page 110? No, yes, 107. Sorry, Mr. CEO. 107, and a question from Councillor Shoemaker in relation to corporate insurance on reservoirs. Okay, Manager Carolyn, can you give us the good oil? How do we stand in terms of insuring our reservoir structures, and what is the cost-benefit analysis around that? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So through you, Mr. Mayor, in relation to the report, we've given a little bit of context of how we've come on this journey and the delay in terms of when the question was first posed and the process that we've gone through to review insurance as a function. And I'd like to acknowledge the Coordinator for Corporate, Karen Searle, who's sitting in the room, who's done the majority of the collaboration with the branches to get to us on this point with regards to the property asset insurance policy that we've entered into. Primarily, the last three lines on page 108 will give you an idea of how we've progressed with regards to reservoirs specifically. And Karen did a brief, I guess, a small cost-benefit analysis process in terms of a formula that relates to it will cost around council $50,000 to insure their reservoirs. And given the budget and the financial constraints and those elements that LGM asked us to consider, it was the view was formed not to insure our reservoirs based on that outcome. And in that process, on the last line there, I'd just like to acknowledge the work for all the branches, as well as the coordinator for corporate with regards to the increase in insurance is really only 0.3, where we had been initially told if we maintained our current assets and given the current climate that we're working within, it would have been around 15%. So we have minimised the assets that we have insured with a significant amount of work with the managers, drilling down as to what is on our asset register and what we can remove.
Yeah, thank you very much, Manager. It's a very comprehensive report and much appreciated. Councillor Shoemaker.
Yes, and my apologies. When I asked the question, I didn't expect to trigger this much work, so my apologies about that. I think it is very good, though, that we have, I've read that you've really comprehensively gone through our insurance and our asset management plans and registers to make sure that we are insuring. I guess it's just good context. I probably am concerned with the experiences we've had, certainly in the last 2 years, and the value of these reservoirs, like 39 reservoirs valued at $24 million. And if I'm hearing you correctly, we haven't insured them. Yeah. And being last year, I just want to confirm, the Mount Warrulan Reservoir, in that storm, we lost the roof of that reservoir, yes?
Through you, Mayor, yeah, portion of it, Councillor.
And
But that's the first one in known history.
And the value of those works?
That's subject to a tender coming in shortly.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, of course, I knew that was coming. I think it's something we do have to consider when we look at these things every year in our budget. It is a risk, and I guess that's one that we accept. You don't pay the $50,000, and being that we've only had one incident, maybe we'll be okay. I really do appreciate the work that's gone into this, and I do think it is something we have to keep in perspective, particularly, this year has been unprecedented with rainfall events, and into the future, they're really encouraging councils to build resilient infrastructure that can withhold climate change and these sorts of things. So, yeah, I really appreciate the information and the work that's gone into this, and I guess I'm just comforted by the fact that council has really assessed its insurance. That's an enormous amount of money to spend. Our premiums of this year, 21-22, $315,553 of our ratepayer money for an insurance premium, and 22-23 to see a marginal increase of $316,593. That is a jump from our 21 premium of $282,000. So I guess, yeah, it's just, we've got to put these things into context. It does come down to risk, but yeah, really grateful for the work that's gone in, and I think something we should consider in our next budget discussion.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Manager Karen. General Manager Jarvis, thank you.
Thank you. Through you, Mr Mayor, just a little bit of context there as well, Councillor, is that the annual premium on all of our insurance is over $900,000. So it's yes, for all of council assets. So we've anguished over our risk appetite and what we really can afford and what element of risk we're prepared to take while considering these. So I just thought, it's nearly touching $1 million a year.
Yeah, my apologies through you, Mr Mayor. Yeah, I see now the premiums I've read out are just for asset property cover premiums. Wow, so over 900,000.
Yeah, thank you, General Manager. Further questions? Okay, so it's recommended that we receive and note the response to the question on notice. Do we have a mover? Councillor Shoemaker, thank you. Seconded, Councillor Potter. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Okay. Right, we'll call I think we'll call the meeting to a close now at whatever time it is, Bree. 5:30 p.m. Thank you all for your attendance today, and have a good rest of evening. Thank